Hello, my name is the Boreal Ranger, otherwise known as Rosie, and today we're going to be doing a quick tutorial into the basics of SAMMI. I promised this guide a very long time ago, and I forgot. Anyways, this is going to be a very short and simple video because I'm not going to be getting into like anything that's too complex. So today we're basically just going to be reviewing decks, buttons, and triggers, which is going to be the very basic first three things that you gotta know about how to use this software. To start off, I'm going to pull the screen in so you have an easier time to see exactly what I'm talking about. So this guide is for people who have already installed SAMMI. If you need an installation guide, I am going to link one down below or probably up in this widget that's probably going to appear in the top right. That's from Swolekat. I found that his guide is honestly the easiest to follow out of the ones that I've done. So if you need the installation guide first, I'd suggest going over there and then coming back here so you can get the full explanation of how the software works. Now that you're done installing SAMMI, you're going to come to a screen that looks somewhat similar to this. You're not going to have nearly as many panels as I do with all this goofy stuff here. It's usually just going to be this blue screen plus this plus mark. Once you're on this screen and you've set up everything correctly, you can hit this plus mark and add a new deck. Once the deck is created, you're just simply going to double click, and it should take you to a grid that looks like this. It's just a simple 10 by 10, and it should be completely empty. This is your deck. This is the block of space in SAMMI that is going to hold all your buttons. You can have as many decks as you like. I haven't seen any restrictions as far as how many decks you can have. And you can have as many buttons in a deck as you like, provided that you can see them and that you can actually have the space to put them in there. Just like how a deck is just a collection of buttons, a button is a collection of commands. These commands are then executed either by a trigger that is set on the button or by manually running the button yourself. Now at the time of recording, I'm not sure if there is a limit to how many triggers that you can place inside of a button as well as how many commands you can put inside of a button. I've gotten quite a few, like at least a couple dozen inside of one, and had like up to 40 lines inside of another one. But unless you're going for something that's absolutely crazy, you won't need to go that insane with things. So I wouldn't really worry about it. But worst case scenario, I can leave a link down to the support Discord, and everybody there has been super helpful to me as I've learned this piece of software. Now that you have this deck, what you're going to do is that you're going to create a button. You can create a button with one of two ways. You can double click, or you can right click any empty square and hit create a button. Now that you've created a button, you have a lot of options to do here. We'll start with the first one, which is edit appearance, and we're going to call this test button. On top of being able to edit the appearance within the edit appearance setting, you can also resize this button just by simply going to the edges, grabbing with the left click and dragging. So you can make it as large or as small as you want to. Typically for the most part, unless I need to be able to click something easily manually from a separate deck that I have, I typically just leave these as a 1x1. So the next thing we're going to talk about in that drop down menu that you get from right clicking a button is the edit settings tab. So you're going to see this little menu pop up here. We have button IDs, which I'm going to talk to when we get into commands, because I feel like those are more tangentially tied to each other. We have group IDs, which I don't typically mess around too much. And then you're going to see allow queue and allow button overlap. So this is going to be a thing where, and I would find that this more often applies to things that involve sound effects, is that if you wanted it so that the sound effects aren't all overlapping on top of each other, you could hit allow queue. And instead of having all of them just activating at the exact same time and your ADHD goes into overdrive, it'll play one sound effect at a time until the queue stops. Whereas if you hit allow button overlap, it plays them all as they're activated or triggered, which can be a bit of a nightmare for some people, and some people think that it's funny. So it's up to you. The other thing that you can edit is your press button type. But I personally just leave this on normal because I don't find that single drag or multi-drag is very easy for me to do. especially when I'm live streaming and I'm just trying to quickly activate something manually. So now that we've edited the appearance and how the button is supposed to work, we can now go into commands. The button is going to store a list of commands inside of it so that when the button activates, it activates the commands that are within it. So if you want to look at the list of commands that are inside any given button, all you have to do is double left click. Now that we are inside the button and we can see here, since this is a new button, we haven't put any commands in here yet. So what you want to do is click this plus sign up here, and you're going to see this drop down menu as well as type to search. Typically, if you want a good idea as far as what is available for commands in SAMMI, you can, honestly, I would recommend more than anything just reading the documentation or just exploring yourself through the software. I've learned more from exploring through the software itself than anything else. However, just to get you started, I'm going to show you some of the most frequently used ones, at least that I use for my setup, and we're going to test them out here. So if we go over to this plus sign, we click it, you're going to see this drop down menu again, and then we're going to hit filter change visibility. Now, I have a couple of filters on this source that I have currently displaying to you. So what we're going to do is we look up the source name for this. It is display capture. And I am going to toggle on and off the opacity. So actually this is on, so we're going to do this for off. I'm going to save it, and then we're going to run it. And when I run this button, you're going to see this screen fade to black. And then if I change the filter name back to on and run it again, you'll see that the screen comes back. This is just a very simple effect. You can do this with any filter that is on a source, and this includes filters that are on scenes, because if you are familiar with the Move plugin from Exeldro, those filters have to be put onto scenes specifically, and it works for those as well. The next one I'm going to show you is kind of something similar. So it is source change visibility. So you can go to a scene name. For this, it is Windows Record. And this is our source name, which is display capture. And as you can see, if we leave this box unticked, it means that it will turn the source off. So we're going to save it, we're going to run it, and as you can see, the screen goes to black. We're going to tick that box now, hit run, and our screen comes back. Another list of commands you should be aware of, especially if you are a Twitch or a YouTube streamer. Both of these options are available to you. I'm not sure exactly how much is available to people who stream on YouTube, but I know for Twitch there is a lot of stuff that you can pull thanks to Twitch being so generous with their API. But if we go into this box, we type in Twitch, we can see a full list of stuff that SAMMI can do. So the one that I use the most frequently is to send a chat message, because SAMMI actually has a built-in feature where it can actually send chat messages on your behalf. We have create a clip, create a poll, create rewards. This is the one that I use fairly frequently. And you can even have it so that it can block or ban users. So basically, it can actually be its own moderation system, which is something that I even use and actually have a deck for that you can go grab from my Ko-Fi for free. gotta mention that one. But again, just so I can show people who are usually predominantly on YouTube, just so they can see what they have available to them. So again, we have sending a chat message, changing your status, banning or unbanning users, getting subscription status, or getting stats, and ad breaks, which is also something that it can do for Twitch, is running ads. And it's very, very convenient for me. So now that we have all that out of the way, we are going to exit this button really quick. So the quickest way to do that after saving is you can hit OK. And we are going to go back up here. We're going to right click and we're going to click edit triggers. So a trigger is basically going to be the thing that tells your button what is going to activate it, what standards needs to be met before it does the thing. Again, the most common way, or the best way to learn what triggers are inside SAMMI are by going to the SAMMI documentation, or just by clicking in here and going through the list. and seeing what's available to you. Just keep in mind that there are some triggers here that may not be available to you, just because a lot of these have to do with extensions that you have to download later on your own. But I find that the most common triggers that you're going to be using would be chat messages, follows, subscribers, or something happening in OBS itself to trigger the thing. I also have triggers set up for ad breaks, but just so I can give you guys a good idea of what a fully fleshed out button looks like, we're going to go take a look at one of the decks I have set up. I'm going to take you guys to my notification and automation deck just so you can see some of the stuff that I use SAMMI for. So as you can see here, I have a lot of alerts. So anything for like subs, gift subs, certain bid amounts, bans, and follows. But the one that I really like the most and has been super convenient for me, basically is my clip button. So if I go over here and I right click so you can see my triggers, I have it so anytime that somebody says !clip, it will do what's in this button. And what it does is that it sends a trigger pull data request, which basically means that it's going to ask, hey, this person who just sent this message, what is their username? After that, it is going to create a clip through Twitch, and it also creates a marker, so that way if the clip that somebody added doesn't have the right length or it's cut off at a certain point, I can go back to that marker and see what is around that marker and then redo the clip myself. And then it's going to time out for 10 seconds, so that if somebody were to say clip again, in the next 10 seconds, it's not going to create multiple clips of the same thing. This is also linked to this button, which again, still has the Twitch chat trigger message for !clip. If I go in here, this is the kind of scary stuff that I was talking about earlier. But to summarize basically what this does is that it takes the information that I got earlier by asking who clipped or who sent the chat message that says clip. It takes all that info, it puts it into a spreadsheet, and it counts how many times this person has made a clip for me. It sends a chat message to my Twitch channel saying like, hey, this person has made this many clips for the channel, and says thank you. And it also sends a trigger button request to another deck that's over here. So basically, this deck right here sends Discord notifications to my server. And as you can see, there are a lot of things that I have set up for notification. But we're going to focus on this button. And as you can see, it basically sends the same information over to my Discord and just says like, hey, they did a thing. And it puts it into this channel so that anytime somebody makes clips, they get recognition for it. Just as another example, as far as what a deck of mine would look like, I have a segment on my stream every now and then called Sip and Spill, and basically I use this deck to control that scene. For instance, I have 3 buttons that you can see over here to the left. One is called Zoom Out, one is called Zoom to the Screen, and one is called Zoom to Me. Currently, we are zoomed to the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this button called Zoom Out. And as you can see, it shows you the rest of the scene. So if I hit another button, here we'll call Zoom to Me. It zooms in closer to me. And then, of course, if I zoom back out again, and then zoom to the screen, it shows you the monitor in a closer angle. Getting back to what I had mentioned earlier, I'm going back to my clip button, because it's a really good example of this. I mentioned that button IDs, which you can see over here at the top left, are actually really important. They're important for 2 reasons. One is that if you ever run into an error with SAMMI and a certain button makes it crash, when you have a crash report pull up, it'll tell you which button ID is the result of the crash. Typically, when you create a new button, let me just go back out here and click again, you'll see that it has this number. And for me, this number kind of means jack shit. Like, when you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buttons, it can get a little insane. This isn't going to be a good way to find what you're looking for in the event of a crash. So, usually what I do is whenever I create a new button, I usually give it its own button ID. So we'll just call this test button just to make things simple. And the other reason why these button IDs are so important is because, again, we go back into here. You see this bottom line right here, which says trigger button, and then it asks for the button ID. Yes, you can come up here and copy paste it, and you can have all those jumbled up numbers, but like I said, it's just easier to find things and remember things if you just give it a name that's relevant to what it is. So when this button is activated and it goes through this list of commands, once it gets down to this line, it's going to trigger the button called clip noti, which again, it's back here in this Discord deck. Because as you can see right here, we have the button ID, which is clip noti, and there it goes. So if you ever wanted like a cascading effect of buttons where you need multiple things to happen, but it's not the easiest way to put it is to put it in like one button, and you kind of just need to have a little more control over things and make sure that things don't happen if you don't need them to, it's easier to just put them in other buttons or other decks or stuff like that. So a really good example as to why you want to have a lot of control over your buttons and decks and being able to keep track of them so that you can toggle them on and off as needed is because of a button that I'm going to show here in just a second. So just to recap, this is my Discord notification deck. This holds all the buttons related to sending messages to my Discord for a myriad of other events. So we have my go lives, my bits, subs, raids, clips, and hype or shout out stuff. So anytime these events happen, it will automatically send a chat message, not a chat message. Well, actually, yeah, I guess technically a Discord chat message to my server to show people like, hey, this is basically just what's been happening during stream. But if we go over here to my stream automation, ignore these two buttons. These were tests and they did not work. We're going to go to trigger, and we're going to see this trigger right here, which is the OBS trigger. Basically, this keeps track of if your stream state has changed. So whether you are currently streaming or if you just stopped streaming. If we go here, it's just a simple on and off toggle. So basically, if stream has started, it's going to enable this Discord deck. If it's stopped, it'll disable it. The reason why I have this control over my deck is because when I'm offline, I like to test out new functions for my stream related to any of these events, especially if it's related to raids, subs, bits, and follows. I try to find new stuff to make my stream more interactive, but because I have to test those triggers, and these get triggered automatically, I don't want it constantly flooding my Discord with pings for stuff that's obviously not happening right now. At any rate, that should be basically everything you know to get started with SAMMI. If you want to see more guides in the future, I do have stuff planned. As you can see, there are a ton, and I do mean a ton of decks over here that I could make breakdown videos for, which is definitely the plan. I don't know if I'm going to break down every single one of them, but I would certainly like to try. I don't know if I'm going to break down the Zelda deck just because that one's a nightmare. Anyways, if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a like. Apparently YouTube wants me to say that now because it makes the button glow, which neato burrito, I guess. Otherwise, you can catch me on Twitch. I'm usually live at around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays and Fridays, usually. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a comment. If you got feedback, leave that too. Otherwise, thank you and have a nice day.